Cool. Are we good? Cool. Let's do it. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Isaiah Sarju. Hello. Appreciate y'all coming out to this, on the last day and all that. I know last night was a little rough for everybody and the night before, and so appreciate it. So this talk is on how threat modeling made me better at online dating, applying threat modeling principles to online dating. So, the creds, security consultant, co-owner at a company called Revis Solutions. I'm red teamer. I teach InfoSec. I teach penetration testing. And my worldview, which is the most important thing that motivates me for what I do, is I'm anti-nihilism, anti-security theater, and anti-wasted time. I am pro-risk-based security. So what that means is I don't believe that just because the sky is always falling, that we just need to accept it and just be crushed by the weight of it all. So there's still hope at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's not a train. So I believe that we can do security by appraising risk, by validating that it's there, by handling it, and then rinsing and repeating that process, and threat modeling comes into that entire process. I love chocolate chip cookies. This has nothing to do with my talk, but if you like my talk, you can buy me a chocolate chip cookie. If you hate my talk and you see me eating a cookie, you can slap it out of my hand. So it'll cause me devastating pain. Who this talk is for. So, this talk is me taking what I believe are the basics of threat modeling, the things that I find most useful, and imparting those to those who have maybe not been introduced to threat modeling. I'm using online dating just as the environment in which to play in and which to talk about threat modeling. So we're going to learn the basics. We're going to learn my favorite tools for doing threat modeling, or for starting to do threat modeling, that process, data flow diagrams, Stride for those of you who don't know it, and attack trees. Those, I believe, are the beginning elements of doing threat modeling. You can start doing that after you leave here. Hopefully you'll walk away with some tips for online dating, specifically doing it more securely. I can't help you with your game. I can barely help myself. So that's not what this talk is about, but hopefully you'll walk away with some tips on how to do it more consciously. So we all know online dating is increasing in popularity. It is being adopted rapidly. One thing that I found humorous, more so than the statistics about how much people are using online dating to find potential partnership, is this last graphic down here. Google's recommendations when you search dating software, you see Tinder, you see Grindr, you also see PostNuke and MySQL. Okay, so that just tells you that online dating has been put into databases. So this is more important than ever. Great. So what was that? Absolutely. We all have needs. So how this applies to online dating. I want to avoid security nihilism and saying that, okay, all my information is already out there. So this is just one more application that's going to mismanage my data and going to lose it. So I'm just going to put it on there because we're all pwned all the time. Who cares? So I don't believe that has to be the future. I believe that there are steps we can take so that we ourselves as users of online dating can do it more safely, and those that are developing online dating platforms can do it with more responsibility. So building privacy and security centric applications, threat modeling is going to help us do that. In the end, this is all pointless if we aren't protecting anybody. Again, I don't believe security just exists in a vacuum for shits and giggles, for us to feel good about ourselves. In the end, we need to protect folks. And, there are any number of folks who probably don't feel safe doing online dating right now because of the environment that we exist in. And so in the end, that's the goal, is to make a difference with online dating or with any other type of applications that we're making that's handling PII and other people's lives. So what are the consequences of bad threat modeling? There are many. I'm going to take two examples. The Tinder matching disclosure that you all probably heard about from checkmarks, and then data linking, which is an important aspect around privacy when you're doing threat modeling. So we're going to just talk about how you can do data linking and why you might be putting your users at risk without knowing it. So let's get started with threat modeling. The first step that I find helpful is doing data flow diagrams. Here's a quick one I put together. I'm going to refer to it. I just want everybody to have an image of it in your head when I describe what a DFD is and what their purpose is. So you decompose the application process so that you understand how data is moving throughout the environment. And then you can apply Stride, which we'll get to each step of the way. And that can help you start to come up with potential threats, come up with potential risk to your application and to your users. So what does that mean? Let's look at it again. So decomposing the application, we see here that it's been divided into discrete areas. We have discrete areas of ownership of that data. We have the dating application itself. We have the end users who are interacting with it and sending data into it. So that's like real-time location data and anything else they're pulling off, probably pulling any type of other metrics off of your phone, such as are you walking when you're swiping? Are you moving in a car? Are you swiping while you're driving potentially? Because that means you like to live dangerously. Let's match you with somebody like that. Then you have social media, and they're siphoning off so much information from there. In addition to just your name, your gender, your profession, your potential employer, they're sucking all of that information in because why not own data? Because we can sell it, and we're all numb to it at this point. So we see then that we know that they're selling that data information to third parties. So information that's coming off of an end user's device, plus coming from third party social media that they might be linking, getting sent in, getting jumbled up, used in their algorithms, and then also getting shipped back out to different participants in the system. So this is the starting. This is how you can start to decompose an application or decompose a system. And then we want to use STRIDE, like I mentioned, to start to enumerate potential risks. So STRIDE, for those of you who don't know, is a great acronym to help you identify potential risk to an application and to data flow. We have spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privileges. So, just to quickly level set, so we're all talking the same language for the rest of this presentation. Spoofing would be like saying you're Isaiah Sarju on Tinder. I don't know why you do that. Your success rates would go drastically down. But let's say you were to do that. So on Tinder, it's pretty easy to spoof. Bumble does offer some type of verification with a photo, facial recognition. So they've thought about spoofing as part of that data flow. Tampering would be like changing the presented profile that somebody has. That could be a back-end database compromise, or that could be being a man in the middle during somebody's actual interaction between a client device and the front end. Repudiation would be having the ability to say I didn't swipe right on that person, and the application not being able to prove that you did or didn't because of logging or something like that, or some type of signing of a swipe, saying yeah, your device signed the swipe, so we know it was you. We have information disclosure. I have that italicized because that's the example I want to go into. And that'd be things like disclosing swipe decisions, disclosing people's matches and their preferences, disclosing potential chats that they're having with folks. Denial of service would be like not being able to connect to the application. If that's a Friday or a Saturday night, that's not good for a dating application. That's going to mess up some people's plans, and they might go off to a different application to reach their end goals. Then there's elevation of privileges. Normally I wouldn't really think about elevation of privilege inside of a dating app because it's really just being able to potentially see profiles you're not authorized to see because the algorithm hasn't hasn't said it's now your time to see this person. But with account linking and with the recent Facebook impersonation data breaches, that is a very real possibility of being able to potentially authenticate as somebody else and experience it from their point of view and run rampant through any conversations they have and change their profile and all of that. So that is a real thing. And looking at that data flow diagram again, we start to see, okay, that social media, let's look at that specific connection of how that's connecting into the rest of the system and apply STRIDE to it. So looking specifically at that information disclosure, there was a research from Checkmarks earlier this year where they were able to see the photos because they were not sent over HTTPS, and so they were able to see the photos. And some of you might be familiar with the other tool. This is called Tinder Drift. I think there's another tool that's been around for years, used at CTFs, something other Drift, where you can just see the images that people are pulling down clear text on the broadcast domain. And so being able to see the photos and then see the response that they give. And they were able to detect if it was a yes, no, or a match based on the size of data returned from Tinder. And so looking at, on the far left, bottom left, if we're looking at between the end user and the front end and we're applying stride, when we got to information disclosure, this is the type of thing we'd be trying to brainstorm. And so this is something they didn't do or they don't care about. And so looking at that specific interaction is where we start to see this issue. And the other thing that this highlights is an important aspect of threat modeling and using data flow diagrams is looking at the intersections between contexts. So when data is crossing contexts from like the end user into the application context, that's where you're going to find a lot of your risk is when data is moving across context. Not so much within systems because you can better, secure that entire system. I can pretty much handle my phone all right. I can make sure folks aren't, logging onto my phone and using it. But once that's crossing a context, that exposes myself to risk. And the same thing happens for third-party applications. So able to disclose how people are swiping and who they're swiping on. So once we've started to identify some of this risk, there are some ways of handling it. Some of you, who do risk management, this is all very remedial for you. For other folks, this is how you can start to think about handling risk. And so just accepting it, you can avoid it, saying I'm not going to do online dating. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. You can transfer the risk, or you can mitigate/reduce that. I like to combine mitigation and reduction because you're either mitigating partially or you're mitigating it all the way. So some folks break those up, but I like to put those together. So let's look at that specific risk right here of information disclosure and how we can handle it from the app side and from the user side. Because it's very important to me that we can use threat modeling when we're developing applications, also when we're using them. So this talk is for everybody. So I want to look at it from both sides. So the app, it'd be easy. Just use HTTPS. Damn, just do it. There's no point these days not to be securing that channel of information. I don't understand why they don't do it. They gave some trite response, whatever. They make too much money to care. They could stand for disclosing if it's a yes, no, or a match. They could just standardize the response size, pad it. Or what the step they're taking right now, they're just accepting the risk. They don't care. As the end user, if we're concerned about folks on the local broadcast domain seeing our swipes and who we're swiping on, we could use a VPN. That would take care of that. We wouldn't be hiding it from the VPN provider, but maybe we trust them for some reason. Or we could only swipe at home, and then it's just our ISP who knows about our swiping behavior. So using a VPN is a good example of mitigation because we are mitigating that risk. We can still operate inside of that environment, inside of a public Wi-Fi hotspot or whatever that might be, but we aren't exposing ourselves to the risk that we've defined. If we swipe at home, we're actually avoiding the risk because we're not putting ourselves, we're not using DerbyCon's Wi-Fi or whatever, or whoever's Wi-Fi. Go do this at DEF CON, see what happens to all your matches. Yeah, so we're just going to avoid that situation, or we can just not care and say, more kind of the nihilistic perspective. We're all screwed all the time. And not in the way that we like with online dating. The other tool that I really like, and I actually use when I'm on the offensive side, are attack trees. Attack trees are a great way to brainstorm and to think about how you're going to attack a target. From the ways that I've seen it done and the ways that I do it, I start with my goal. I come up with potential sub-goals that are okay, that encompass that larger goal, and the ways that I can reach that goal. So being able to say, let's say hypothetically you want to stalk somebody. I'm not advocating that you do that, but I'm saying, or let's say you don't want to be stalked by somebody, but it's an important thing to do to create an attack tree of how could I be stalked in the context of online dating and the popular applications. So a sub-objective could be to learn where they live. You could do that just by asking them, hey, I like your profile, what's your home address? Probably 90% success rate with that, right? So there's that if you're trying to learn where they live, or if you're trying to learn where they work, they could just put their company straight in their profile. Or you could ask for where they work. And then the bottom three there, under learn where they work, is what I want to talk about in terms of linkability. So let's say they use their real name. Let's say they use, they actually say their profession. They might not say where they work, they use their profession. And they you can have an idea of where that building might be located based on the distance from a location that you control, and you can spoof easily. So you can use data linkage. And so that brings us to NIMITY and linkability, which are important concepts of privacy when doing threat modeling around privacy. So NIMITY is just the amount of information that's disclosed. And then linkability is the ability to bring multiple databases together and create a super database or a virtual database of combining those databases. For those of you who speak database language, it'd be like a key. The common key would be like an email. So across multiple data breaches, if you see the same email, you're starting to build a profile on the person that has this email, and then all you need to do is find when they actually use their real name in one of those breaches. And now you have a super database of that person and their life. There's been plenty of research done on this, of the ability to de-anonymize data. But this right here is starting out with not anonymized data. You're having non-anonymized data across multiple sources that you can then link. I've blurred out a lot of stuff on this person's profile because even with just the person's school and the type of work they do, I was able to find them. And so I was able to find them across other social media and basically create a super database of this person's life, their dating preferences, obviously, where they work, where they live, based on location. So I blurred out a lot, but trust me, they are the same person across that Tinder profile and that LinkedIn profile. But I want to be respectful. Disclosure does not equal consent, and that's an important thing to remember, I think, across all the work that we do. Just because information is out there doesn't mean that they want all of you to see it, because you're geofencing, who you want to disclose that information to when it comes to something like online dating. Cool. So now we're sufficiently scared and depressed. Again, we can handle this risk. So thinking back to the DFD and to the attack map, if we're the application developer, we can allow users to choose what information they disclose. That's basically what they're doing right now. That's risk transference. We can let's say Instagram is being used to perform further investigation, creating an even larger super profile of this person. Potentially don't disclose the Instagram handle. And so this is just reducing the risk because you could still have some of the Instagram pictures in the profile, but it might only be like the 5 most recent pictures or something like that. So the data's been, the risk has been reduced, not completely removed. A good example of this is how Tinder and Bumble approaches differently. Tinder actually discloses the Instagram handle. Bumble just loads the pages. So it pulls the photos for you and then displays them in your profile. So not disclosing that handle. And this is also important going beyond just stalking, but just harassment in general. Folks contacting you out of the channel that you've chosen to potentially engage with them. So I appreciate that Bumble does that. We can also do things like fuzzy and delayed location. So making it harder to pinpoint where somebody is exactly. That can increase people's privacy, or giving them a slider to say, only show like the city I'm in. Because right now they're really only doing close to exact location, especially with Bumble, because they do to the 10th of the mile, or Tinder where you hide your distance and then people think you're a bot just trolling. So being able to provide some type of gradient where people say, okay, you can show the city I'm in, so you can let people know I'm where I say I am, but I don't want people to be able to track me real time. Being able to say that you're in Louisville is a lot less risky than being able to say, you're 1.3 miles away, and they can then spoof their location and start to get an idea of where those overlapping distance circumferences are. So from the user side, there's also steps that we can take. Just don't date. But you're still exposing yourself to this risk in any number of ways in your life. Just within this environment of online dating, you would be not exposing yourself to this risk because you wouldn't be participating. I like the idea of using a fake name, not disclosing your employer, and not connecting other social media accounts. That's a good way to still be able to participate in the online dating sphere without necessarily opening yourself up to the risk that we've enumerated. Now, you'd have to do stride across every other part of that application. Think about it for yourself. But for the DFD that we have and for the attack graph that we have, that would be something that you could do that would reduce some of that risk. One thing that I appreciate is looking back at that DFD, we see here, actually this is a better one right here, where we have in the bottom left, where we see the app client is connected to the front end, and at that point, what information is being shared? It's really the real-time location and then other metrics on the phone and potentially battery usage. Are we going over Wi-Fi? Are we going over cellular? Whatever that might be. But the key thing there for what we're talking about is location. So when we think about this, we say, okay, we control the location with our device. So that means if we can find a way to terminate that application when it's running in the background, so prevent it from running in the background, so we always we're intentional about when we're sharing our location with this environment. Or one thing that I appreciate about iPhones is that they let you set if you're going to share your location all the time with an application or just while you're using it. So if you want to say just while you're using it, maybe you only use these online dating applications while you're in transit, so folks aren't able to pinpoint where you live. So breaking out that application, seeing where the risk is coming from, lets us start to make more intentional decisions. And then, potentially spoofing or your location, or you maybe just don't care. So different ways of handling the risk that we've enumerated. Okay, so this has been like a quick crash course in the 3 tools that I think are most important for threat modeling: data flow diagrams, applying STRI to data flow diagrams, and using attack trees. And there's so many more steps to threat modeling. I'm not even great at those, but that's what I start to do. And it gets me going, and then having those conversations with folks, having those brainstorming sessions can help you start to enumerate those risks and potential threats to your application or to your environment. And so I really like threat modeling just to get started. If you're let's say a penetration tester in the room, attack trees, attack graphs are great. If you're having trouble coming up with ideas of how you're going to compromise your objective, work backwards from it. Say, define clearly to state what your objective is, and then come up with the different paths that will get you there. Some of them will cross, as you saw in the attack graph that I had. Some of them could cross into each other, finding out where they live, finding out where they work. Both go back to potentially snooping on their Instagram profile and seeing if there's information disclosure there. So seeing where those cross and where different attack graphs, different parts of the attack graph can benefit one another. So if you get stopped at one location, you can keep going via another path and potentially pick up where you left off. So in the end, I think the great thing about threat modeling is, one of the great things is it makes us think critically about who's taking on risk. So is it the organization building the application? Is it the end user? Is it a mixture of both? And then how do we handle that risk on either side of that coin? So appreciate it. Any questions? If there are no questions, appreciate it. Thank you.